Hey all, this is Kurt. This is the flagship stream. I'm doing this ad hoc as it's just a test at this point. But this is 5 hacking tips, as you can see in the lower right hand corner. Basically, it's going to be a eventually scheduled stream. For the next couple of times, I'm just going to do it ad hoc as a test, and I'm also doing some test recording at the same time. I would like to also record this and put it up on YouTube as some training material for everybody. But what I intend to cover here are basically some hacking tips that I come across during the week, during my life. Some of the broadcasts might cover issues related to cybersecurity in general, cybersecurity careers, and building out your career. But what I want to cover today are a couple of things. So I'm sharing my desktop here. And I was reading the other day on LinkedIn about how, like, if you do ls minus L, you get a listing there, and a lot of people use that. But on Kali Linux, you can just type L and get the same thing. One thing to keep in mind here is, though, it doesn't include the A flag, which is for all. ls minus AL is actually one of my favorites. So that includes the hidden files or the dot files that are listed there. So that's one of them. And by the way, the title of the broadcast and of the podcast is um, it is 5 hacking tips, but keep in mind that I might show up with a couple more than 5 at any certain time. It looks like my little thing isn't working there, but whatever. Put it on that way. Um, and next thing I wanted to cover was, a lot of times, and this is like really basic, bear with me, things will get more interesting as I go on. But a lot of times when we go into like a CTF or even a pen test situation, or even a lab situation during a test or an exam, they'll give you a subnet and they won't tell you what's on the subnet or anything. And what a lot of people do, eh, or especially junior pen testers or people that um, are starting out, is they'll just dive into Nmap and do like what was a really nice Nmap I came up with the other day. Maybe I can eh, wrong wrong screen. Yeah, there's a couple in here. So apologize for this. Right there. No, that's oh, some log4j testing, which is a good topic right now. But here's one I have up. So like we do this where we basically blast at it and we hit it as quick as we can for all the different OS and service types. That's the minus A there. And we'll do it across the whole subnet. What I would say is, rather than doing this, is think about it a little more strategically and open up something like, because once you hit this and you do this for the whole subnet, I forgot what the time came up. The time will come up in a minute. It was something like over an hour and 45 minutes or something like that. And it's not necessarily because I have a slow network. It's because it actually takes that long to gather all that information for Nmap. And it is information ultimately that you want, but let's go about it a little smarter and do, well, there's 2 different ways of doing it. One really quick and dirty way is to basically uh, run a ping sweep shell script. So this is it right there. That'll run a, um, yeah, that'll run a class C uh, uh, ping sweep for that subnet. So all you do is you change that to whatever class C you're directed at, run that, and then basically do a sh and then something like that where you're gonna pipe it out or cat it out um, to a file. Um, and then another like even smarter way, if you want to even save more time and run a little quicker and use Python, is there's a sweet little script that we have here. Um, this is all, by the way, I don't have the links and I'm not necessarily going to show it, but this is all out. It's available on the internet. Basically, how to do a ping sweep with Python. If you Google search that, you probably come up with it fairly quick. But this is the same thing. You put the IP subnet down here, and you just run this, and you pipe it out to a another file that you can analyze later. For the this would run instead of waiting an hour and 45 minutes to find out what's going to come out of a comprehensive Nmap run. It's a lot better to use something and just get an idea of what's up around the place. Run some Nmap scripts on certain things, and then try poking around on other things at the same time. That way, you're multitasking instead of just waiting on one thing. Or run a couple of Nmaps isolated to a single host, and then and work other service testing things on other things while you're waiting for that. So you're constantly exploring instead of waiting for one single thing to run and being bottlenecked. There's another one that came up, and this came up really good the other day. It was related to testing on Log4j. So when you get a shell back with a interpreter session, another thing to do if you can get escalated privileges is to increase your persistence with Metasploit. So I'm going to type it out here. It's so if you've got a multi-handler session, a interpreter session going with, for example, a Windows box, and you've got escalated privileges already on that Windows box, then just basically background, whatever you have running as far as a session, and then in the Metasploit prompt that comes up after you get out of the sessions is use, for example, Windows local persistence. I'm not in Metasploit right now, but and then underscore service. Yeah. So that will set up a more of a persistent and a secondary. Remember, until you have two solid connections to a host, you don't really have C2. So that's what this does. It basically throws that on. And then after you do that, of course, it's set L host. So that's back at whatever your attacking machine is or the proxy. And then set L port. And that's a secondary port that you would have listening for additional persistence on the system. And make sure you have that port open. And Interpreter will start a listener on it itself. A second, or not Interpreter, but Metasploit, a second connection. Getting embarrassed here, kind of nervous. And then this is another thing that came up. So what I found out starting out was I really focused on the Linux command line. I was taking offensive security lab challenges. And when I got into a Windows box, I didn't spend a whole lot of time enumerating or post-exploit enumerating, and even not that stealthily as I would in Linux. And what I've learned over particularly the last 2 to 3 years is that you really got to know the Windows box and the Windows command line just as well, because from a pen test professional perspective or a red team perspective, that is the main target. A lot of times it's on the client side and it's focused into a Windows environment. And then that said, another thing, and this is the final thing, is I have a lot of notes, and I keep vociferous notes on what I do and everything I do, and I keep backups, as you can see from probably showing too much information here, but I keep a lot of scripts on hand ready to use. And one of the reasons I am able to do that across many systems, by the way, including a system I have sitting down my living room, is I basically make sure that, I run my VMs, that they run locally, but any data that I share again among my computers or my VMs, I have synced, and I encourage people to do that even when they use Linux, because it saves a heck of a lot, and it kind of fuses the Windows and the Linux experience, especially if you're using um, a virtual machine. So what I wanted to share was mount VM shares. So this is just a simple script that I use. Of course, within VMware, I create the mutual drive with the host system. But then wherever I want to mount that, and for some reason, when you connect it or you set it up to auto mount when you start up Kali, it doesn't seem to work for me. So I need to have this script one way or the other. But I run this script after I've logged into Kali for the first time, and it sets up an E drive for me. And that's a drive that syncs across the cloud and then syncs with other E drive systems that I have in my other computers. That's all. Next time, I'll probably talk about certs or something a little more career related. Thanks for putting up with me, and it was nice doing this. Talk to you later.